Thank you so much. So let's see. Can you
Yep.
see my presentation? All right, great. Let me just start my timer so I don't go beyond time. All right. Okay. So, everyone, I'm very happy to be here. If you're watching me right now after work or during your dinner, thank you for spending time with us and learning with us. And today or tonight, I will be sharing about my learned experience from migrating .NET applications to Azure. And hopefully, in the next 30 minutes, I'm able to deliver and inspire you with this talk. So before I start, let me share who am I. So I'm Jonah Andersson. I'm a Filipina-Swedish living here in Sweden. And I currently work as an IT consultant working with software engineering, development, DevOps, and all the great stuff that we do in the cloud and Azure. And I'm also a Microsoft MVP for Azure technology, and I teach about Azure regarding certifications as a Microsoft certified trainer. And I also started a community, virtual community, Azure User Group Sweden in mid north of Sweden during the pandemic times. So I'm very proud and humbled to be here standing today in my home office to deliver the session. So um, since I don't have the real audience in front of me right now, but I want to ask everyone or this quick question if any of you have been involved with a cloud migration project. And I'm sure some of you somehow, we that worked in the cloud world, have experienced or somehow been involved in this kind of project. And I myself has been one I mean has have I mean have experienced or been into this kind of project, and to the point that I was like a superwoman who had the mission to lift a legacy application to the cloud. So Wonder Woman or Superwoman is one of my favorite characters when I was younger. So I thought this is a good option. But I was also like this giraffe, who was very positive and proactive, long necked to get up to the cloud. And I have this big vision and passion to help that project move to the cloud. So, what was my mission then? So, my mission in that project, which is about several years ago, in one of my IT consulting projects, I had a mission to migrate or modernize a monolithic architecture infrastructure, which was developed. The applications were about 10, 15 years old. It was not coded properly, not documented properly. But as you can see here to the left, we have the monolithic architecture applications, and we have the traditional on-prem servers in Windows 2008 R2, and then our databases in the old SQL server also back then in 2008 version, and also the reporting ones. So our goal was to move those infrastructure that were on premise to the cloud. And one of the primary reasons why we had to migrate to the cloud, specifically to Azure as our choice of cloud platform, is because our servers, like for the dev, databases, the UAT staging, and all other environments, were hosted in Windows 2008 R2, which was back then were end of life and was out of support. So we had this goal to migrate to the cloud. So if you have seen this image as well, so in terms of migrating existing .NET applications to the cloud, there are different maturity levels for that. So for example, from the left to the right, existing applications that are in on-premise with monolithic architecture has the option to migrate or rehost or modernize with minimal code changes, or modernize it as new with everything else like a new code base and new architecture with different options like microservices, containers, or a combination of PaaS or hybrid options. So in that project, I had this like really superwoman role because I had the role to be the solution architect to give options how we can re-architect that old legacy application. At the same time, I was the developer supporting the system that were in production, and also the bug fixer and all those like roles that you can count on as a typical IT consultant should do and should deliver for the project. But the most last part there is I was the inspirator of the modernization to the cloud. So it was a big project, cloud migration project for a small team. And when I talk about a small team, it's actually just me, a project manager, and then another co developer who was there to exchange ideas and to plan the things that we need to do in the project. So it's literally a small team, not even a scrum team, which should be at least three members. And that describes us back to this image. If we, this is an image that I first encountered when I was studying Agile System Development here in Sweden. So when I first saw this before I became a consultant, I just thought, oh, it's just a series of pictures with the trees and different like things in there. But when I started working as an IT consultant, as a developer, and doing this modernization project to the cloud, I could definitely relate to the reality of software development projects or even cloud migration projects. So, like, every team is different, every business use case is different, and each member of the team interprets each use case or business case differently. So, going back to that migration project, so we did first initiate the idea of rehost. So to make things easier, and just because we were not so many in the project, so we did the lift and ship option, but that didn't work because our project manager or the client thought that it was too expensive to put everything in the Azure VM, and there was conflict with the versions of the applications, and we couldn't move it to just Azure VM that time. And this was years before Azure made updates on the lift and shift alternatives at that time. So that didn't work. So we decided let's do all we can to do refactor. So I was involved also in refactoring some of the code that were actually coded by 220 different developers. So there were different styles of coding in both in back end and front end. But we tried our best to update all the dependencies, update the .NET version. And at that time, the next version that we could upgrade it to was from .NET 4.6 to .NET 4, 3.0 to make it, compatible with the Azure Web App Service. And we tried to do that, but the system is not up and running. There's still things that were broken. So we tried to do the last option, which is to start from scratch, re-architect, rebuild, start as new UI, new backend, new framework, and that actually worked. And this entire test and try it all from rehost, refactor, and rebuild. We when I say we, that's actually me and another developer with 20% help. But we tried it all for the span of 6 months, maybe. But after that, and this is in parallel of maintaining the system that's already in production and supporting it. But that project, after 6 months of trying everything, and it succeeded with the re-architect and rebuild as new, the project was just like it was stopped. And I wondered why, because we already, just when we're succeeding, on that cloud migration project, it stopped. And I did ask them why, and it's because there's no exact budget for the clients or user that we're using that system. And another reason is that they are not confident to move to the cloud yet. They don't want to invest about it. So, from being a superwoman or Wonder Woman, I actually went 404, which means I got exhausted doing everything I can. I literally went 404 that I got burnout, and I actually decided to quit that job in that company. And I decided to take a break, like a coffee break, not just a coffee one, but a real break. I took, I think, a month off work from that in between jobs to did the reflection and just take care of myself and reflect. So I did a summer vacation in Portugal, in Lisbon, very nice city, and I did some reflections there. So I was reflecting a bit and was wondering what went wrong in that project. I mean, did I do something wrong, or there was uh, what failed there? So I thought, was that project a fiasco? But it wasn't a fiasco because we succeeded at the end after we tried everything. So if I could teleport time, I mean, teleport and turn back time, what could have we done differently? What could I have done differently? So, like the movie Back to the Future. So, I'm in the future now. I want to go back from the future and did some reflections and things, come up with different things or lessons that I learned from that situation that I'm in my perspective as a developer doing the cloud migration at that time years ago. So, one of the things that I learned, number one, is to make sure that before we move to the cloud, we have this cloud strategy and business plan, because this is a very vital first move in every cloud migration journey, regardless if it's for like modernization or it's a new project. And it's also important to identify what really are the business requirements. It's not just about moving to the cloud, but identifying the business requirements and fit solutions to it based on what the business really needs. In that project, the problem was I didn't have that support from the business side. They just asked me, Jonah, we have this application. We want to move to the cloud to solve the end of support problem in our servers. And that was it. So that this gives me a conclusion, a lesson that business and cloud strategy is the first vital step in every cloud migration goal or project. And the next lesson I learned is that it is important to pay our tech debt now and not later when you are already in the cloud. Otherwise, there will be an interest later that you need to pay when you're in the cloud. So, one example in that specific project is that I did mention that it's a very, I mean, aside from it being a legacy code, it was not well documented, and there were certain bugs in there and duplicate unnecessary data in the database that needs some fixing and paying for the tech debt. And then next lesson that I learned is that being cloud ready is very crucial in every step. So aside from business plan and cloud strategy plan and tech depth of resolution, everyone in the team should be cloud ready. So it means that preparing a cloud or Azure Heroes, if you're moving to Azure, in migrating this plan. So that includes having a great solution architect to give us the solution how we would implement this solution to the cloud, or great developers that are ready to move to the cloud and they're aware about the things that needs to be done in that project. So cloud readiness is not just in my level as a developer, but it requires the entire team to work together in getting things ready for the cloud. And then lesson 4 is that starting small. So sometimes I feel like in that situation that we were starting so big with the goal that we missed the small part or small steps of planning. So 5S to success, like start small, smart step to steps to success, is very important because steps that are so huge and big and not so certain and not planned smartly will lead to failure. And this reminds me of the history of Sweden. So, if you've been to Stockholm or Sweden, there's a popular tourist spot called Vasa Museum in Stockholm. And it is actually a story. I myself have been in that boat first time, first time I visited Stockholm. I want to see it. But the Vasa Museum, the Swedish Vasa, is a boat that was like known or built in 1960s. I mean 1628, and it was popular or known to be the most high tech warship in Sweden. Unfortunately, this boat actually has become popular because this boat didn't get destroyed or didn't get sink during the war at that time, but it actually sank because of the engineering problems and also the communication problems between teams and members of the teams working in this boat. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you because it gives us a good example about everything in that cloud migration journey that I have. That it is important to plan carefully the engineering part of it, and of course the soft part of it, which is the teams collaborating and working together. So if you are in Stockholm, you should get in that boat and listen to the history of it. It's kind of interesting example that we can learn something from. And then the next lesson that I learned as well is being conscious about data storage in the cloud. So in that project, one of the reasons why the client didn't want to proceed with that project, even though we succeeded at the end, is that they are conscious about how their data is stored. Like in Sweden or even in Europe, we have the GDPR policy, like where your data resides, and they're not so confident about Azure since Microsoft is a US company. And at that time, they weren't really sure about storage in the cloud. And that time, it wasn't even when the Sweden Central was created. So when you're moving to the cloud, planning where your data is stored and the compliance and GDPR policy is also worth checking out. And of course, choosing the right data storage. For example, are you gonna like if you already have Azure, your SQL like databases, you might want to rethink and plan that maybe your data or your tables might or your business use case might work better in another type of database like the SQL Cosmos DB or other non-structured data. And of course, compliance and security are also good to know. 6, make sure that your dev and ops are sync. So one of the things that I learned, even though I was like both the dev and the ops, the architect at that project, we had someone who were like setting on the business requirements in a list. And I decided, or like I suggested, that we would use modern tools like Azure DevOps since we're modernizing or developing to the cloud. But one of my team members who's setting out the rules in listing down the business requirements, they prefer to use Excel in monitoring the tasks. So there, a small thing already, there's unsync or conflict there. So it is important to make sure that everyone in the team are coordinated and in sync about the business goal of, or the goal of moving to the cloud. And of course, if we're not sure how to get started, let's make use of the tools and experts that we have today from cloud providers. For example, Azure has this Azure Expert MSP for every cloud, I mean, every country. So that's also good. Communities like we have today, like I'm an Azure MVP, and we have a lot of communities that are willing to help and share knowledge and experience about different technologies in a specific cloud platform. And of course, don't be afraid to fail and try again. So, like every project, sometimes we have to just try it out and do our best. If it doesn't work, then we try another thing that works. But get help and do as much as you can, but never be afraid to fail, and prepare for whatever journey that you will have to learn in the process. And then next is like security is very vital, critical. That should be part of the plan. Shared responsibility model is very important to understand, and also it's critical in protect. It's critical to protect your identity, the user's identity in your applications. Okay, so succeeding slowly is better than failing fast. And I hope that you never make the same wrong moves that we did in that project. So I come up with different things that you can do instead, like recommendations, like, for example, identifying your migration triggers and innovation triggers. And this is based on the cloud adoption framework. So this is good to check what are your motivations for migrating or doing the innovation. And then I recommend the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework. It is actually a collection of like guides and best practices and tools that you can use for the cloud migration, which has this steps and process for strategy, planning, the ready phase, adoption, and the governance and manage that's included in the plan and ready and adopt phase of the cloud adoption framework. And also, one of the things that many organizations are thinking about cloud is how much would it cost them if they move to the cloud, with considering that you can do pay as you go consumption model. And those that are new in Azure, for example, they don't know where to start. So if you don't know how much would it cost, these are the tools or pricing tools that you can use, like Azure pricing calculator, that you can already have. I mean, even before starting up your workloads in cloud, and then the TCO calculator that can compare your how much would you save from on premise and versus moving to the cloud in the next 5 or 10 years. And of course, when you're ready in the cloud and you're still trying out, then setting budget alerts and the cost management tools is also good to know. And the R's of digital estate. So there are different options in cloud migration. So I tried most of them. So they're good to know. It's part of the cloud adoption framework. And then there's also the Azure Migrate tools that's available for everyone that wants to migrate their existing workloads in migrating to the cloud, and like the option to even move using the data box and just exactly on the Azure portal. So there's a tool called Microsoft Assessment as well for those that are trying to like track or do some assessments in the cloud migration. So here there are different options like the Azure Well Architected Framework, but one of the interesting one is the Cloud Journey Tracker. that you can use. For example, if you want to track your journey and there are some checklists that you have to answer, like, for example, the cloud adoption strategy evaluator. So you have to like answer some questions and check on the checklist. And then it gives you the recommendation about your cloud adoption strategy. So this one is actually something I did earlier this year to evaluate the project that I had years ago. So if I were to like evaluate or assess that project, it shows that it was very low and it has a lot of recommendation to do because there were a lot of things or gaps that were missing there. And the well architected framework is a great tool to architects or everyone that are still getting started. It helps provides like tools to improve in different category: reliability, optimization, security, and everything. So check out AKAMS/WAF for the well architected framework. Azure Hybrid, so you don't have to move everything to the cloud. So there are scenarios that sometimes you have to keep your infrastructure private, in a private on a bit of hybrid. So there are options like Azure Hybrid tools using Azure Stock Hub, like uh, ACI and multi-cloud options, as well as edge options for everyone. And you're still having a challenge, then that means you still need to get help from Microsoft. So Fast Track for Azure there is, and also Microsoft has the Azure Migration and Modernization Program. And if you're active with your collaboration with Microsoft locally in your country, there's actually this Azure Expert Managed Service Providers available for organizations as well. In the top 10 design principles, this is something I like. It's part of the architecture documentation in Azure. And I really like it because I'm a developer slash DevOps slash architect. And I really like the idea that we're building solutions for healing. Like things, we make our applications better for the cloud so that we don't have to repeat ourselves. We build something that will last, not forever, but that will last, that it can itself heal or design to scale out, like what it shows here. So that's a good like reference as well. And if you want to learn about cloud adoption framework, there's a shortcut link to Microsoft for that. So you just have /AKMS/CUF. So WAF and CUF are two good links or shortcuts in terms of cloud migration and architecture in the cloud. And there's a book actually that is free in Microsoft Azure that helps you in your cloud migration and modernization, especially for legacy apps like this. So the result of my fiasco was actually writing a book about Azure. So I'm currently in the middle of my book projects. I'm writing a book with Rayleigh, learning Microsoft Azure, cloud computing, and development fundamentals, because I really have this vision because of my experience that affected my generally of how I feel about the cloud and as what I do in my career. I decided to write this book to inspire others about the cloud, especially those that are still beginning in their journey. So if you want to read it, feel free to reach out or scan this QR code. So finally, I just want to end an advice that don't rush up rocket flying up to the cloud. Be smart, choose the best possible option, and be prepared, because by failing to prepare, you are actually preparing to fail. And that was the quote by Benjamin Franklin. So thank you so much, everyone. If you have questions or feedback, feel free to scan the QR and reach out to me anytime. Thank you.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed.
Yeah, thank you so much.
and found myself in a lot of your slides. And as we discussed in a cloud summit, that is pretty same thing that we experienced, that you told me after my presentation that I
Yes,
wanted
yes.
to expose my pains during some kind of projects. Yes. So
Yes.
can you tell me what was the biggest, let's say, the biggest problem in any kind of your migration, not technically,
Mm,
maybe in approach, adoption, uh,
yes.
clients that want to listen you or something like that?
Yeah, as yeah, good question. I like that because technical, I know we can solve it with Azure, right? There's a lot of ways to solve a problem. I think the biggest non-technical challenge in that cloud migration project is the mindset and the mentality of cloud. Because if you know, if you don't know so much about something, like for example, cloud, so we have organization have this or people have this consumption, oh, that's not good because that's what they heard. But I think the most challenge there is being having that cloud knowledge and being proactive in a way that you're open mind to break the old on-premise traditional way, because people are not ready for change, and sometimes it's the change that makes us the best of ourselves, just like any applications or any organizations. Yeah, so that was one of the biggest challenge, and of course collaboration, like the Vasa Museum is very important. It all relates to each other, like engineering teams collaborating means it equals to best solution, whatever project it may be, so it builds a stable boat or stable application in Azure, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Uh, Actually, what was the trigger for that question? Your slide, dev and ops need to be in sync.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I wouldn't like to open Pandora box with that question for now. But that is something that is always on the table for every new project transformation and so on.
Yes, I agree. And also the business also. Yes, that's
So
right.
we
Mm.
wouldn't like to open Pandora's box right now.
Yes, yeah,
So
but yeah, I really hope that everyone that are watching us live and even later will be able to learn from my session. And we have a great session coming from Marilag about event-driven architectures, and so I'm excited to watch it later
so
soon.
yeah, and I think all sessions will be great.
Yeah, it is. It is. I look forward to the bicepception and the coming ones as well.
Yep. So thank you again for participating, and I hope we will see you soon on some conference.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you very
everyone.
much.
Bye bye.
Let's